I raised my daughter to be a warrior. I taught her that traditional femininity was a prison, that staying home was surrender, that needing a man was weakness. I built my entire identity around rejecting everything our mothers and grandmothers accepted. My name is Margaret, and 6 months ago, my 26-year-old daughter told me she envied the life I'd taught her to despise. This is the story of how my ideology destroyed my relationship with my daughter, and how I'm learning that liberation might look different than I thought. This is my confession about the cost of certainty. 26 years ago, I gave birth to Emma in a Brooklyn brownstone surrounded by feminist literature and protest posters. I was 32, a tenured professor of women's studies, and absolutely certain I knew how to raise a liberated daughter. Her father and I divorced when she was 3, amicably, progressively. We shared custody 50-50. I made sure Emma saw me as a complete person who didn't need a man to define her. I dated casually, never remarried, never even moved anyone in. I wanted her to see that women could be whole without traditional partnership. I raised Emma on a strict diet of feminist principles. No pink. No princesses. No dolls unless they were action figures. When she wanted to play house, I redirected her to science kits. When she showed interest in baking, I signed her up for coding camp instead. Every bedtime story featured women breaking barriers. I read her biographies of Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Gloria Steinem, Malala. By age 7, she could explain the wage gap. By 10, she could articulate intersectional feminism. I was so proud. Her elementary school had a Bring Your Parent to Work day where kids drew pictures of what their parents did. Emma drew me at a podium, fist raised, with the caption, "My mom teaches women to be strong." The teacher submitted it to a feminist parenting magazine. It was featured on the cover. I framed that magazine cover. Hung it in my office at the university. It represented everything I'd accomplished, not just my academic career, but my success in raising a daughter who would never accept limitations. When Emma was 13, she wrote an essay for school titled, "Why I'll Never Be a Housewife." She argued that domestic labor was unpaid exploitation, that traditional marriage was institutionalized servitude, that staying home with children was intellectual suicide. The essay went viral in feminist circles. She was invited to speak at a youth feminist conference. At 15, she gave a TED Talk about rejecting traditional gender roles. I sat in the audience crying with pride. I thought I'd done everything right. I thought I'd saved her from the trap that had caught so many women before her. Emma followed the path I'd laid out perfectly. She went to an elite liberal arts college, majored in gender studies and economics. Graduated summa cum laude. Got into Harvard Law School. She dated sparingly, always keeping men at arm's length the way I'd taught her. Never need them more than they need you, I'd told her since she was 16. She internalized it completely. After law school, she joined a prestigious firm in Manhattan. Corporate law, 70-hour weeks, partner track. She bought a studio apartment at 24. She was everything I'd raised her to be: independent, ambitious, successful, completely self-sufficient. We'd have brunch every other Sunday. She'd tell me about her cases, her career trajectory, her plans for the future. Always work, always achievement, always the next goal. I listened with satisfaction, thinking, this is what liberation looks like. She never talked about wanting a relationship. Never mentioned marriage or children. At 25, when her college roommate got engaged, Emma called me laughing about it. "Can you believe it?" she said. "Sarah's throwing away her whole career to play house. She's moving to the suburbs." The suburbs? She says she wants 3 kids and a garden. I asked her what year she thinks it is. I laughed with her. We joked about it over wine. "Another woman lost to the patriarchy," we said. Thank God Emma knew better. But then, about a year ago, something changed. Emma started canceling our brunches. When we did meet up, she seemed distracted, distant. The light in her eyes when she talked about work had dimmed. She'd lost weight. She looked exhausted in a way that wasn't just about long hours. "Are you okay?" I'd ask. I'm fine, Mom. Just busy. Making senior associate this year. But she wasn't fine. I could feel it. Mothers know. The breaking point came on a Sunday morning in April. Emma showed up at my apartment unannounced, no text, no call. When I opened the door, I barely recognized her. She'd been crying. Her eyes were red and swollen. She was wearing sweatpants and an oversized t-shirt, no makeup. This was a woman who wore power suits to the grocery store. I can't do this anymore, she said, and collapsed on my couch. Do what, honey? Talk to me. She looked at me with this expression I'd never seen before, something between rage and desperation and complete exhaustion. Any of it, Mom. I can't do any of it anymore. The job, the apartment, the independence, the whole performance. What are you talking about? You love your career. She laughed, this bitter, hollow sound. Do I? Or did you love it for me? Did I ever get to choose? Of course you chose it. No one forced you. Didn't you? Her voice cracked. You've been choosing for me since I was born. No pink, no dolls, no traditional anything. Every time I showed interest in something feminine, you redirected me. Every time I mentioned wanting something domestic, you acted like I'd announced a terminal illness. I felt defensive rising in my chest. I was protecting you. Giving you opportunities women never had. I never asked to be protected from being a woman. She was crying now, tears streaming down her face. I'm 26 years old, Mom. I'm a senior associate at a top law firm. I make $300,000 a year. I have a corner office and a view of Central Park. That's incredible, Emma. That's everything we. And I'm absolutely miserable. Her voice dropped to a whisper. I'm so lonely I can't breathe. I go days without speaking to anyone who isn't a colleague or a client. I spend my evenings reviewing contracts and my weekends catching up on work. I haven't been on a date in 2 years because I don't have time and I've forgotten how to let anyone in. You're just burned out. You need a vacation. I don't need a vacation. She stood up, pacing. Last week, I went to Sarah's house. My college roommate, remember? The one we laughed at for getting married and moving to the suburbs? I remembered. What about her? She has 3 kids now. 3. Her house is chaos, toys everywhere, finger paintings on the fridge, noise and mess and life. Her husband came home while I was there, kissed her like he meant it, picked up their youngest and spun her around. They made dinner together. The kids helped. It was loud and imperfect and absolutely beautiful. Emma's voice broke completely. And you know what I felt, Mom? Envy. Pure, aching envy. Because she has something I'm terrified I'll never have. She has a family. She has a partner. She has this rich, full life that exists outside of quarterly reviews and billable hours. But she gave up her career. She didn't give it up. She chose something different. She worked in marketing for 6 years, saved money, found a partner who wanted the same things she did, and they built a life together. A life where she gets to be home with her kids while they're young because they prioritized that. Because her husband has a job that makes it possible. Emma, that's not liberation. Who are you to define liberation for me? She was shouting now. You decided what liberation meant and forced it on me like it was objective truth. But you know what? I don't feel liberated, Mom. I feel trapped. Trapped by your expectations, trapped by this identity you built for me before I was old enough to choose. I sat there, stunned, as Emma continued. Do you know what I do at night, Mom? I watch videos of women baking bread. I follow Instagram accounts of mothers doing crafts with their kids. I scroll through wedding planning boards. I cry over engagement announcements from people I barely know. But you gave a TED talk about rejecting. I was 15. I was saying what you wanted to hear, what you taught me to say. I thought if I said it enough, I'd believe it. But I never did. Not really. She pulled out her phone, showed me her search history. Traditional wife lifestyle. How to be more feminine. Is it too late to want marriage and children? Women who left careers for family. I've been living a lie, Mom. You're a lie. And I'm running out of time. That hit me like a punch. What do you mean? I'm 26. If I want kids, and I do, I desperately do, I need to find a partner. I need to build a relationship. I need to figure out what I actually want my life to look like. But I don't even know where to start because you taught me that everything I actually want is wrong. I never said wanting a family was wrong. Yes, you did. Maybe not in those exact words, but in every comment, every raised eyebrow, every time you steered me away from anything traditionally feminine. You taught me that women who stayed home were weak. That women who prioritized family over career were betraying feminism. That needing a man was pathetic. She was right. God help me, she was right. But Emma, you can have both. Career and family. Can I? She laughed bitterly. Do you know how many female partners at my firm have kids? 3 out of 47. 3. Do you know what happens to women on the partner track who get pregnant? They're quietly moved to less prestigious cases. Their hours become flexible, which is code for not serious enough. The path I'm on doesn't leave room for the life I actually want. Then leave the path. And admit I wasted 8 years on the wrong road? Admit that you were wrong about everything? I'm terrified, Mom. I'm terrified that I've already missed my chance. That I've become so hardened and career-focused that I won't know how to be soft. That the men who want traditional families will take one look at me and see someone who's too independent, too ambitious, too feminist to be a good partner. She collapsed back on the couch, exhausted. I envy Sarah, Mom. I envy her so much it physically hurts. She has everything I want and nothing I have. And the worst part? She didn't sacrifice nearly as much as you told me I'd have to sacrifice. She just chose differently. But I never thought I was allowed to choose that. Emma left that morning without resolution. I sat in my apartment for hours, her words echoing. For the first time in my life, I questioned everything I believed. I'd built my entire identity around rejecting traditional femininity. I'd written 3 books about it, taught thousands of students, raised my daughter to be a warrior against domestic expectations. But what if I'd been fighting the wrong battle? I started researching, really researching, not just seeking confirmation of what I already believed. The data was sobering. Women's reported happiness had been declining for 40 years, even as our opportunities expanded. Depression and anxiety among professional women were at all-time highs. The loneliness epidemic hit educated, career-focused women hardest. Fertility rates had collapsed. Women were freezing eggs in record numbers, desperate to preserve future options. But the success rates were dismal. Most would never use those eggs. They'd just bought false hope while real possibilities slipped away. I looked at my own life with fresh eyes. I was 58, alone, married to my career. I had professional success, tenure, published books. But I lived in a 1-bedroom apartment with no one to come home to. My last serious relationship had ended 10 years ago. I had friends, sure, but most were other professional women, equally alone, equally successful, equally empty. When was the last time I'd felt true joy? The kind Emma described seeing in Sarah's chaotic kitchen? I couldn't remember. I started interviewing my students differently. Instead of asking about career goals, I asked about life goals. The answers shocked me. Most of them wanted traditional things, marriage, children, partners, family. But they were terrified to admit it. They'd mouth the same feminist platitudes I'd taught them, about independence and career and not needing men. But when I dug deeper, when I made it safe to be honest, they'd confess their fears. I want to be a mother more than anything, one told me. But I'm afraid if I say that, you'll think I'm weak. Another, I met a guy who wants to get married and start a family. He makes good money, says he'd be happy to be the primary earner so I could work part-time or stay home when we have kids. My friends say I'm settling. But I think I'd be happy. Am I betraying feminism? I'd been teaching them the same thing I taught Emma, that traditional choices were wrong, that wanting marriage and family and partnership was somehow less than wanting career advancement. I started reaching out to women who'd made different choices. Women I'd dismissed or pitted for years. I interviewed Sarah, Emma's friend. She was younger than Emma but seemed somehow more settled, more content. We met at her house while her kids were at school. I loved my marketing job, she told me over coffee. But I loved the idea of being home with my kids more. My husband and I ran the numbers. We could make it work on his salary if we were careful. So we chose that. Do you regret it? Sometimes I miss the professional validation, she said honestly. But then my 4-year-old runs up and shows me a drawing she made, or my oldest tells me about his day, or I have time to make dinner from scratch instead of ordering takeout, and I remember why I chose this. But you gave up your independence. Did I? I'm not financially dependent by default, it's a choice we made together. I could go back to work tomorrow if I wanted. We planned for that. But right now, this is where I want to be. Why is that less valid than choosing a career? I didn't have an answer. I met with a former student who'd gotten married at 23. I'd been disappointed in her, felt she was wasting her potential. But when I saw her 5 years later, she was thriving. She worked part-time as a graphic designer, had a 2-year-old, and was pregnant with her second. I know you thought I was making a mistake, she said. But I'm happier than I've ever been. My husband and I are partners. Real partners. We both work, we both parent, we both contribute. It's not some 1950s fantasy, it's a real, modern partnership where we chose roles that work for us. Don't you worry about dependence? I worry about a lot of things. But dependence? No. Interdependence isn't the same as dependence. We need each other, and we've built a life where that's a strength, not a weakness. Woman after woman told me variations of the same thing. Traditional choices didn't mean oppression. They could mean fulfillment, if freely chosen. The problem was never the choice, it was the lack of choice. And I'd spent my whole career telling women that only one choice was valid. I called Emma 3 weeks after our confrontation. Asked if we could talk again. This time, I listened. Really listened. Not to argue, not to defend, just to hear her. She told me about the life she wanted. A partner who wanted family as much as she did. Maybe cutting back to part-time legal work, or switching to a less demanding practice area. Children, 2 or 3. A house with a yard. Time to bake and garden and do all the things I'd redirected her away from. I still want to use my law degree, she said. But I wanted to serve my life, not be my life. Is that so wrong? No, I said, and meant it. No, honey. It's not wrong at all. I apologized. Really apologized. For projecting my fears onto her. For deciding what liberation meant without asking what she wanted. For making her feel like her deepest desires were something to be ashamed of. I was so afraid you'd end up trapped like I thought my mother was, I told her. I never stopped to ask if my mother felt trapped. I just assumed. And I forced you into a different trap, one made of my expectations instead of society's. Emma's working with a therapist now, unpacking years of conditioning. She's dating, actually dating, not just fitting men in between work obligations. She joined a church group, started taking a baking class, let herself explore the interests I'd discouraged. I'm working on a new book, though my publisher is horrified by the concept. It's called The Freedom to Choose, Why Real Feminism Means Supporting All Women's Choices. It argues that we've swung too far, that in rejecting traditional roles, we've made them taboo instead of optional. The feminist community is turning on me. I'm being called a traitor, a handmaiden to the patriarchy. But I don't care anymore. My daughter's happiness matters more than my ideology. I'm 58 years old, and I'm starting to understand what I got wrong. Feminism was supposed to be about choice, the freedom to work or stay home, to pursue careers or prioritize family, to be traditionally feminine or not. Somewhere along the way, I'd turned it into a rigid ideology that only validated one path. I'd become what I thought I was fighting against, someone who told women how to live instead of letting them choose. Emma's figuring out her own path now. It might include marriage and children and traditional roles. It might not. But it will be her choice, not mine. And I'm learning to support whatever she decides. If you're a mother who pushed your daughter toward career at the expense of other dreams, I want you to know, it's not too late to listen. Really listen. Your daughter's version of fulfillment might look different than yours, and that's okay. And if you're a young woman who wants traditional things but feels ashamed of those desires, I want you to know, those desires are valid. Marriage and motherhood and domestic life aren't prison sentences if you choose them freely. They're just different paths, no better or worse than any other. Maybe the real revolution is letting women want what they actually want, without judgment. Maybe liberation means supporting all choices, not just the ones that look like progress to us. That's what I'm learning. That's what I'm fighting for now. And if my story helps even one mother really hear her daughter, or helps one woman embrace her true desires without shame, then maybe I can forgive myself for the years I spent getting it wrong. Maybe it's never too late to choose understanding over certainty. What do you think? Have you ever felt pressure to want things you didn't actually want? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more stories about the messy reality of being human.